Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Their Story Matters right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Michael Fischer. The homeless and voting. This is something that is maybe a crisis at the present moment. He is a homeless expert, a community advocate, president of New York Central Park South Civic Association. He discusses the crisis level of the homeless epidemic and how the numbers are really getting up there with the Great Depression, and we're probably going to see them go up even more. And how do we get people to vote when they're homeless? You know, it's they don't have an address, they probably don't know a lot what's going on, don't know where to go. Do they have identification? And why is it so important that we actually get them to vote right now? And there are 7,000 people in Seattle that lack shelter. We're going to see those numbers rise as time goes on. This is a crisis right now, this pandemic. It's not just a crisis of health, but it's a crisis of economics. It's a political crisis. It's a humane crisis. And the people that suffer the most are those that are homeless, because they seem to be dismissed and not counted in many ways. And every single one of us can be homeless at any time, right, Michael?
That's absolutely true. I mean, a lot of people who end up on the streets, unfortunately, are people that go through personal crises in their lives. I mean, the coronavirus that's hit the world has impacted a lot of families where they can't afford to pay their rent, they can't afford food, and eventually, potentially, they're going to be thrown out of their houses, or they're not paying their mortgages, will be thrown out. So it's a terrible crisis, and it could happen to anybody ending up on the streets, where they get so mentally ill over it, maybe become alcoholics or drug addicts, or just need to be medicated, that they don't know what to do. And unfortunately, in the United States of America, we just really don't have programs in place that address these issues like they should.
Well, if a statement that people who die in wars are losers, what is the opinion of people who are homeless? And a lot of the time people look at them, well, why can't they just go and get a job? They're just being lazy. And it's not a case of that. A, where are the jobs right now? B, it's very hard to get a job if you don't have a roof over your head.
Mhm.
And, what are you doing if you can't take care of yourself physically, or if you're hungry, or if you have children to look after? I mean, this is a no blame and should be a no shame situation.
Well, I was having a conversation with a couple on the street, and they happen to be drug addicts, but they're trying to get themselves off the drugs. And I asked the woman, I said, "Well, why can't you find a job?" And she said, "Because I don't have an address.
Right.
And when I apply for a job, they won't hire me."
Hmm.
So there's just, I hate to play the blame game, but I really blame our government. They're doing just a terrible job, terrible job in really addressing the issues with the homeless. And I think it's this homeless crisis just is way over their heads. They just don't know what to do. The only thing they see fit to do is take that big giant checkbook out and write checks for programs that just fail the homeless,
Right.
don't do anything.
And really what they really need, I mean, we're going into winter, they need shelter. They need shelter, they need food, they need stability. Yeah, and of course there aren't the jobs out there. I know that there's a lot of people that are transitioning into more tech jobs, which means that they need a computer if they're going to work from home. They need a home in order to work from home. A lot of the time it's not a question of they don't want to work or they don't want to belong. It's just that A, what is out there, and B, how do you do it literally, from the streets?
Well, the majority, quite a few of the homeless people on the streets are mentally ill.
Hmm.
They're just not mentally ready to really work in most cases. They need help. And what the government, I know in many cities, Seattle and California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, is they do provide some sort of shelter, but it's really not designed to really help them get out of the problem. We need to create modern rehabilitation facilities, and we don't have to do it as expensive as they want to do it. Like, for example, in California, they're putting people in very, very expensive hotels, and at that rate, these cities can
Mm,
go bankrupt. There's plenty of military bases that are no longer military bases; they're empty. You could use those types of buildings. There's plenty of land owned by federal and state governments, empty buildings that we could use to create modern rehabilitation facilities to actually help these folks, help them in many cases get back on their feet,
mhm.
job training, and potentially get into affordable housing. Now, there are a lot of people that can't be helped. They just
Right.
can't. No matter what you do, you're not going to help them. But they shouldn't be on the streets.
Hmm.
They should be in special types of housing where they can be helped and not left to die on the streets. I mean,
Right.
people that are on the streets, unfortunately, are left to die. They have a much shorter lifespan. A lot of them commit suicide. Their immune systems are just very weak, especially during the coronavirus. So a lot of them catch the virus. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. And for whatever reason, in all these major cities around the country, the governors, the mayors, they want to spend billions of dollars. I know, for example, New York City, they spend over $3 billion a year on these very, very expensive buildings that they rent out. And the only people that benefit are the landlords of these buildings that are very
Hmm.
expensive. The companies, the outside companies they hire to manage these buildings, they spend millions and millions of dollars on. And the homeless people, a lot of them don't even want to go into these shelters because they're afraid of getting beat up or robbed.
Yes.
So, and the politicians gain something too because they gain support financially.
Yeah.
So it helps everybody, but actually the homeless. It's a
Right.
very sad state of affairs.
Yeah. I'm here in Vancouver Island, Victoria, BC, just across the water from Seattle.
Hmm.
And since obviously the pandemic and the not being able to be inside, we're seeing exactly how many homeless are out there, and tent cities have just opened up everywhere. And then they moved them into hotels that were no longer in business because they crashed and burned as well. And the problem is they just put them in there with no help, no support, no supervision. And we're seeing them trash the, we're seeing, one guy who's homeless left it and said, I don't feel safe there. There's drug lords going on, there's violence going on. And the thing is, it's all very well, giving them shelter, giving them, this, but what about the support? We're dealing with mental illness, we're dealing with addiction. And at the present moment, with the entire heightened state of the world right now, this is an even more strain upon their entire psyche. So it's not just putting them in and saying, oh, look, they're in a hotel, they're being taken care of. Where are the social workers? Where's the support?
The
It's just missing.
politicians, unfortunately, the politicians just feel that the homeless can't be helped. I mean, I know that in most cities throughout the United States, they just leave them on the streets, and they're
Mhm.
pretty much like, if they want to stay on the streets, let them stay on the streets. They have a right to stay on the streets, and that's it. The court granted them the right to stay on the street. The ACLU challenged all the major cities and basically said, won in the court, and the court basically said that a homeless person can stay on the street unless they're a danger to themselves and a danger to other people. So they want to stay on the streets, they can. Now, I ask myself this question every day. I go, why do politicians want them to stay on the streets if they want to stay there? Most of them can't help themselves. Most
Right.
of them don't even know what they're doing,
Yeah.
so they're not in a position to make those decisions for themselves. So I say to myself, why do they allow this? Because it's the easy way out. That's
Yeah.
why. It's easy for them to write these big checks for these expensive hotels or buildings, throw them in there,
Mm.
get rid of them, as they say, and
Yeah,
that's what
out
they're
of sight, out of mind.
right.
Yeah.
But the thing that they're doing, which I think is dangerous, is that in a lot of cases, a lot of the homeless are drug addicts, and they drop them into these hotels, into these communities where people just don't get a chance to even learn anything about it, and they drop them in the communities, and so what happens is they leave the hotels. They're doing drugs right on the street, right there. They're doing things in the street which they shouldn't be doing. They're defecating in the streets, urinating in the streets. And, you're talking about kids. You're talking about mothers that are taking their kids outside or their dogs for a walk, and fathers, of course. And you see an uptick in crime in these communities. It's not fair to the people who live in the communities or the businesses, and it's not fair to the homeless people
No.
that are in these areas. They need help, and our government is just the governments are completely just abandoning them for whatever reason. And when you complain to the government about what they're doing, they say you're a racist, which I don't know where that comes from, but
It's an
everybody.
excuse. Just paint it, with that, and um, anything that they can get out of actually doing anything, they'll point the finger at anything. It's also this constant. Do you remember Flash on a site? You get to a site and all you have is flash, 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 and you can't even see what's going on the site. In many ways, that's what they're doing. They're turning your attention to something else because they want to avoid doing anything with that. It's not sexy. It's not flashy in any way. And of course, with an election coming up, right, they don't want to put any emphasis on that whatsoever because, they want the people, the rich and everything else to get out there and vote. They don't want the homeless vote because they might vote a different way. So,
Well, I think they actually would vote a different way because I don't think that they like the way they're being treated at all. I mean,
exactly,
they're being
exactly.
treated in a horrible way and disrespectful way. I mean, to be homeless on the street is the worst. Is the worst thing to have to go through. I was talking to a gentleman on the street who's homeless, and he too, like the young lady I spoke to, is a drug addict. And I walked up. I said, "Wow, you look really good today." He goes, I'm trying. He goes, I just found somebody who took me in to for housing. He goes, I'm trying to get off the drugs. I'm trying to get my life in order. And I said, well, I have to tell you, you look great. You really do. And I've actually bought him food and stuff. I mean, I won't give him money because unfortunately he'll use
Yeah.
it to buy drugs. And he knows that a lot of people know that. But so that's a nice situation. Now, for every one of those situations, you've got
Mm,
100 where they're just completely way out there in left field, and they don't know what's going on. They're on the streets, and the government just says leave them there,
mm,
and they really make a unfortunately, there's a lot of garbage that they leave on the streets.
yeah.
They're defecating and all of that stuff, and it's not a good situation for them, and it's not a good situation. It's a sad situation. I mean, if the majority of them who are mentally ill knew what was going on, they themselves would just feel just horrible about it and
Right.
just don't want to be in that type of situation. And yet our government, the U.S. government, just doesn't understand that. They don't get it, which I don't understand why. It's not that complicated.
Well, if it's not self-serving, it's not going to be addressed. Um, Homelessness now is growing everywhere in the world because of the economic situation and people losing homes and jobs and everything else. And we're going to see more families out there. And now,
We do.
the families are just literally desperate to have a roof over their head and a job. And now, mixed in with the street violence and the drugs and everything else, which can be extremely scary. And it's these are our vulnerable people, the people that are drug addicts. They didn't get up one morning and go, I'm going to be a drug addict and live
No,
on the streets. There's circumstances that put them there. How many of our veterans do we see on the streets? Post-traumatic stress just thrown away.
it's not that difficult to end up on the street. It's
No,
not
it
that
isn't.
difficult to go through an emotional crisis in your life where, one thing after the other just takes you down. You lose your job,
Yeah,
your spouse leaves you, they take the kids, or, where both of you are together and you both lose your jobs and you don't know what to do, where the food's coming from next, and you see your kids going through this, and, you get in such a difficult emotional scenario that you don't know what to do. And then one thing leads to another, and you potentially get mentally ill. I mean, a lot of people don't realize being an alcoholic is mental
yes,
illness.
yes,
Being
yeah,
a drug addict is
mm,
mental illness
yes.
as well. So people have to understand that a lot of these crises lead people into those situations. And our government has absolutely no passion. I think the attitude of the government is
No
just here's the
compassion.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Just get rid of it. Let them stay. They want let them stay on the streets, or we'll throw them into shelters, or we'll put them into these hotels, and let's just get rid
Hide
of the
them
problem.
away, out of sight, out of mind, right? Hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it's really very sad, and I see it going on all over. I know in my city, in New York City, I see it all over the place. I
Yeah.
mean, you watch these people on the streets, and they don't know what to do. I mean, and a lot of them are so mentally ill that you can't even have a conversation with them. They're crying out for help. And so if the government walks up and says, "We'd like to take you off the street and help you," and they say no, they just leave them.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this before. It's crazy. It makes
Yeah.
no sense.
I've interviewed a lot of veterans, and one of the things that I really, really admire about them is that when they came back, they were all in some form of post-traumatic stress and felt that the help wasn't there. And so what they did is they formed their own organizations to help each other because they understood what they were going through, and through various programs and various things, help them get work or just simply, stabilize into a way of wanting to live for a
Right.
start. When you're on the street, I've lived out of my car for about 5 months, and I didn't have any insurance on the car, so down side streets trying to park so I wouldn't get noticed. And it was because of an investment I'd made that went sideways. And it was one of those circumstances. And, you're already in a spiral down and the emotions are there. And it's very, very hard to think straight or to look at anything rational when you are in extremely high stress. And we've got to understand that people on the street has at some point, come to that crossroads where they're extremely high stress, don't know where to go, feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, and feeling alone because nobody seems to be there to help them.
And it's a terrible thing to go through. And a lot of people end up committing suicide over that. I mean,
Yes.
they just can't deal with it, and that's it. And there our government is, acting like they know all the answers, but that big fat
Well, I
checkbook.
mean, that's if they do the checkbook, because, we're not seeing that checkbook really used too much. Maybe on, the poster thing, they're look at the hotel that we're putting them in. But then when you come down to the nitty gritty of everyday help and the support that is needed out there, is the big fat checkbook being opened? Or is it just flash, to make it look like they're doing something?
I think a little bit of each. I mean, we do see a lot of spending. We don't understand what they're spending it on.
Right.
They're not prioritizing how to spend it in a way that's the most productive. I think that the United States government and all the major cities need to get together and have a summit and have a discussion over this. We need to figure out a way to deal with this problem in the United States, and it's a global problem, obviously.
Yeah.
But we need to find a way to deal with it, and nobody seems to want to do that. I was looking at trying to get a summit together, and then we had the crisis. So,
Mm.
the Corona crisis took precedence over, a summit. But because it was really starting to get bad in New York City. I mean, we have, homeless that are living in subway cars.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have them living in Penn Station, Grand Central Station, and the numbers, 60,000 last year. Now they say 70 to 80,000, and potentially maybe 100,000
Yeah.
by the
And
end
with
of.
winter coming, where are they going to go now?
Well, they can go to shelters, overnight shelters,
Not
but a lot of them
if they
don't.
have a pet, and so many of them have dogs because that's their lifeline.
They
And
won't
if
go. A lot of them are going
no,
to stay in the streets. They're going to go into the subway cars. They're
yeah,
going to go into the buses and so on and so forth. But what good does that do?
hmm,
In the year 2020, as a society, we shouldn't have people living on the streets.
no,
It may, there's so many possibilities to help them by creating these modern facilities to help these people, and yet nobody wants to get involved and do it, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And part of it is because politicians, this is a process that's going to take a long time, and
yes,
they're in the office for 4 years, 8 years, they're out. It's too difficult to deal with, so they just don't bother with it.
yeah, and it it's as you said, it's something that really they have to get into and they have to have some compassion for. And one of the things we're not necessarily seeing with certain politicians is the word compassion.
There isn't, and the sad thing is 80, 90% of the people that are homeless are minorities.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we really need to address that problem because it is a problem there. We need to try to help them get rehabilitated, get into a job. A lot of them we could get into a job. I mean, look, if
Yes.
you get 30 or 40% of them, or maybe 50 or 60% of them back into a job, I mean, think how much that would improve the quality of their lives. And yet the government says, they want to be on the streets. There's nothing we can do to help them, and that's just so bogus.
Yeah.
It's just a lame excuse for being a lazy politician.
Yeah, so the vote needs to happen right now. Every single living soul needs to get out there. You're already seeing a tidal wave in the States are trying to block voting. And because everybody knows, because change is needed desperately. How do you approach the homeless and say to them, we need your vote? As this, they are surviving every day, every moment, moment to
Mm.
moment. you know
Right.
um, they feel the politicians don't care, and what the next politician probably won't care, because it feels like no politicians ever care.
Well,
So
I
where's the
think they love
incentive?
to. I think that unfortunately, I think they love to use the homeless to buy their vote, which
Yeah.
we've happened. We saw it happen in California, and in some other markets where they're actually trying to get them to sign these pieces of paper to get the votes. But what they should be doing is we should be getting voting booths brought into shelters
Yeah.
and give them the opportunity to register and to vote. That's what we should be doing. But they should vote on their own, not being told who to vote.
Right.
Just be educated on what the politicians stand for, what have they done with the homeless populations, and so on and so forth, and then give them a chance to vote. I mean, they have every right to speak as anybody else, to be heard. They
Yes.
have every right to be heard just like anybody else. And of course, I don't see these booths being brought into the shelters. They're again, the politicians are just looking for the easy way out. They don't want to handle the problems. And I guess if there's a way for them to do it illegally to get a free vote, they'll do that. But then
Yes.
that's the sad thing. To use a homeless person who's suffering and struggling right now to steal a vote from them, maybe giving them, in California they were giving them $1 or $2, for the votes, and for that to happen is just totally sad.
And
It's
criminal.
these
you know
politicians are
yeah.
just these
it's
parties. Yeah, they're just sad. It's sad when you see these things happen.
it's
Yeah,
taking advantage of people that are already down. And
absolutely, absolutely, it is, and they're just knocking them down even further. I mean, it's
yeah.
ridiculous. I always try. When I'm walking the streets, I look at the homeless and I try to speak to a lot of them, and it's just a very sad. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that situation, and if I was, I would hope that somebody would help me. I would hope that my government would help me, get me, you know, rehabilitated and help me to get back on my feet again.
Yeah.
And not just say, here's a shelter. If you want to stay, stay. If you don't, stay in the street.
Right.
And if you stay at the shelter, maybe you'll get robbed. Oh, well, it's
Yeah.
terrible. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
get beat up. It happens.
Yes.
But it's a terrible situation.
It feels like for them, like a no win situation. A couple of people I've interviewed in the past, one of them for about 10 years was buying the signs of the people who were saying, I'm hungry, etc. And he said, I'm not going to give you money, I'll buy your sign off you. And
Oh,
eventually in New York actually had an art gallery of all of the signs bringing awareness to the homeless, and has ended up touring the country and everything else. It became a life of its own. Another guy said that he used to walk past a homeless woman every day to work, and one day decided to sit down and have a chat with her. And he now has been allowed into that circle because they're not going to let everyone in. They're very distrusting. And he writes a blog every day on what's going on in their life. And he's written a couple of books with their stories. These are people. These are
I would,
human beings that
I was
have a story.
walking one day. I occasionally I'll have a cigar. I was walking. I like it when I do smoke a cigar. I'll smoke maybe a little bit better cigar. And I had a couple cigars in my pocket. And a homeless guy walks up. He goes, "Can I have a cigar?" I spent a few bucks on it. Yes, you can. And I cut it for him, lit it up for him, and he loved it.
Yeah.
I was in my car once, and a homeless gentleman. I'm at a light, and a homeless guy walks up. He goes, "Can I have that cigar, please?" And I was the only one I had. And I said, "All right, but hold on a second." So I clipped the part where I was smoking, and then I lit it up and gave it to him. I mean, I lit it up while he
Yeah.
had it in his mouth, and he was the happiest guy in the world. But when you can try to help people on the streets, it's a good thing. But none of what I do there really helps them. I mean, we need our government to step in and start doing the right things. We have plenty of money
Yeah.
Our world has plenty of money to help these people.
Well, yes, I mean,
We don't
you
spend
know,
it.
if a little bit of the 1% started doing some trickle down, there is plenty of money. If we stop spending money on war planes and
Right.
creating more wars that take billions and billions of dollars and actually put it invested into the people of your country, we wouldn't have so much anger, we wouldn't have so much division, and we certainly wouldn't have so much poverty or homelessness. I mean, how many people are literally one check away from the street?
Quite a few people. Quite a few people. Right now, you can't evict people. It doesn't look good, and in some cases, it's illegal. But there's going to come a time when they can, and there's going to be thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of more people that are going to be on the streets. And what's really sad about it is you're going to have kids on the streets, and
Yes.
that's inexcusable. It's
Yes.
inexcusable. We should be spending the time right now to start investigating where we can put these people, where it's safe for them, it's safe for the communities, safe for everybody, and look at ways to take care of them. We were talking about creating jobs and everything. I know that Amazon was talking about um, Amazon and Microsoft and some of the other companies. What we can do is we can create some shelters for these people. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys are better at creating jobs.
Right.
Stick to creating jobs. Create jobs for these people. Help them. Help get them rehabilitated. Help create jobs for them. That's what I like to see.
Yeah. There's an organization, I think it's called freecodecamp.org. A gentleman came on and he said, "This is not my organization, but I'm just supporting it because for so many people who can't get out and do the physical jobs anymore, they literally train people to do coding at whatever level you can do. And they said there's so many jobs out there that are needed in the coding world right now. And, for a lot of people, that job is gone. It may never come back. It's certainly not going to be back for a while. What about the retraining? Everybody wants to step up and have a purpose and have a job, except for, of course, if you are in a total mental distress, then you don't even know really from one day to the other many a time. But most people just want to have the dignity of a job. So let's create training. Let's help people, get off the street and find housing. I mean, let's look at Europe. I mean, they seem to do it better. And why aren't we learning? Why aren't we looking at them and going, they've got a good program there. Look at their rate of homelessness compared to here. And here we're just, pushing it under the carpet. No, 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 no. Don't look at that. Look at this over here, much prettier. And we can't throw human beings away like this.
No, it's a disaster. Sad.
But if you've got a government that the word compassion doesn't even come into it. You've
Yeah.
got a government that is so me, myself, and I, so narcissistic and so greedy and so power hungry, where everything is the spotlight on them, and just thousands upon thousands of lies. How is anybody going to do anything with the current government?
We're not.
No.
The problem's going to continue to go onward and onward. But people need to step up. People need to volunteer their time. People need to protest.
Yes.
We need to get people out there protesting the government and letting the government know we don't approve of the way they're handling things. That's what we need to do. But unfortunately, people won't do it.
Well, I mean, look what they do with the protesters. Even if they're peaceful, they bring out the militants, start throwing gas and everything else, right? And of
Mhm.
course, if it's done in a democratic state, then the militants are even more violent. In from a from a spectator point of view of looking in at America, I have to say that I have to be physically mindful of not to be in despair of what's going on over there, because we're seeing such division and such hate rhetoric coming up, and which leads to violence and lack of conscience, and most certainly there isn't seems to be an ounce of common sense anywhere, and we're seeing it rather like a tornado gathering and gathering and gathering into a hysteria. What is going to break that hysteria?
I don't know. I just think that, well, I mean, I think that we all have to have, I think the thing about what's going on in our country is people just don't sit down and have talks, like
No.
racism.
Right.
Racism is a conversation that we should all have conversations about and talk about it and try to understand it better. And people need to be better educated about it. I think that every child should go through, different types of courses addressing racism and
Yes.
addressing the history of people. And so they actually understand what different, groups of people went through in their lives throughout
Mm.
history. And we don't do that at all, really, in our education. And I think that people who are guilty of, committing what I call racist crimes, where they say terrible things, or
Hmm.
maybe they get into a fight with somebody, because they don't like the color of their skin or whatever. I think these people need to, take these courses, and they need to do community time in areas, where there are minorities, to get a better understanding of them, so that they're not so angry. Because there's just so many angry people out there now. It's scary.
But what I don't understand is, why are you so fearful? Why are you so fearful of a person of color? Why are you so fearful of somebody that's a blue state? Why are you so fearful of the opposite sex? It seems to be, we know that there's been buttons being pushed,
Yeah.
and excuse the expression, but the shit has been stirred, and people are buying it, and it's, like with the QAnon. I don't understand, the things that they come up with. As I said, right now, if a movie producer or director, whatever, said this is the plot for a movie, now there's a pandemic, and there's a president who doesn't care about the people, and there's this and there's that all going on in the same year, they go, oh no, nobody will buy that, right? It's so hard to buy what is going on right
Right.
now.
If we saw a movie like what's going on right now, I think we'd be all be scared and say, "Thank God it's not happening to us."
Exactly, exactly. And we wouldn't believe that it could be possibly true. That wouldn't be allowed. Well, let's look at the things that we can see, the things open up front with this government of yours right now in America, of the things that they're doing, the lies that they're saying, one mouth, two mouths, both saying something different and then denying it. We've seen that they have absolutely zero compassion for anyone that basically is of any color or any poverty. And if they can't benefit from somebody financially, they don't want to know. If they can't benefit from somebody for the ego, they don't want to know. And they're willing to throw away their people just for the spotlight on their greed. And it just is despairing to see. But a saying was given to me a couple of years ago, that the universe is here to shake us up, to wake us up, for us to step up and change it up. And if we're not being shaken up right now, I don't know what the hell's going on. But we're being asked to step up. And if we don't like what the government is doing, then step up.
Protest.
Protest, start of movement.
I believe
It,
in
you know,
protesting. I think protesting is the greatest thing. And, in America, we're able to protest and we're able to say what's on our mind. I think it's the greatest thing. And I think the other thing is talking to people.
yes,
You know, if
open
you're a white
conversations.
person, talk to people with color.
Yes,
Get to know them, have
yes,
conversations, talk about racism,
yeah.
talk about things that we all have in common and some of the things that are going on. We need to have these conversations. And unfortunately, people don't. People are afraid to have these conversations. I have these conversations all the time with people of color, all the time. We talk about racism, we talk about what's going on in the country, and, I learn a lot, they learn a lot. These are great conversations to have. And I
They're
would like,
empowering, aren't they? They make people feel less hopeless and feel like, okay, you feel the same way, but now what can we do about it? I have a new word. Actionism is the new activism. Activism is talking and ranting and raving about it. Actionism is doing something about it. What can you
education.
do?
Education.
Yeah,
Kids might you might grow up in a household where your parents are bigots, right?
yeah,
So that's what you learn. So we need to educate these kids. We need to assume that every household is going to have a certain amount of racism in it.
right.
So you educate these kids, you put them through courses, you teach them about, all the different, the people that are out there in the world, and so they can learn about different cultures
Hmm.
and learn about how much we actually have in common. We
Yes.
we all have so much in common
Yeah,
as a world. No matter what, who you are, no matter what color you are, we all have so much in common, and we need to share that, as opposed to the other way around, which is being ignorant and stupid, and blaming everybody else and being a racist. I see racism all the time, and I call people out on it
yeah,
all the time.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cowardly act of the KKK, hiding underneath sheets. It's you haven't even got the dignity to face somebody head on.
They're
And
disgusting. Yeah.
and
There's
it's
no room in this world for hatred
right.
and
No,
for animals like that. Those are animals.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, you're doing animals an injustice. We're seeing the
You're right.
animal
We
word,
can't call them an animal. We call them,
teaching humans how to
you're
be
right.
compassionate.
You're right. I always say animals are. I always say like dogs are nicer than human beings.
Oh, hell of a lot.
They're
So,
compassionate.
yes.
So you're
Yeah.
right. I shouldn't say the word animals. I should say that they're so far down there that the devil. How about we call them the devil?
Well, you know what? They haven't ignited the heart. You cannot be in a heart space, in a caring space, in a space of kindness and compassion, and knowingly do harm to anyone else. You can't. Now, we can disagree 100% with what the politics is doing right now. And we cannot like the people for what they're doing, because we feel they're certainly not doing it from any space of heart. They're doing it from their own selfish agenda.
Yeah.
We can hold them accountable for that. But the moment you step into hate, you lose the love. And so, we have to do things from a loving state and hold people accountable. Yes.
We have to
But
hold each other accountable.
yes. Oh,
When somebody
yes.
hurts somebody else, we stop them.
Yes.
That's what we need to do. And when somebody's doing those things, we make sure we put them through training and courses.
Yeah.
We teach them not to be hateful. That's what we have to do.
But you've got a hateful leader who loves hate rhetoric. I remember the statement that he said to his people, I could go out and shoot someone right now and you would still love me.
That was terrible.
I mean, it's every single thing he does towards people is demeaning, even his own followers. It is so demeaning and so degrading. And so, in the past, any politician doing that would have lost their job. And what we don't understand from the rest of the world point of view is, why is he still in power?
Well, there's an election coming up, so we'll see what happens.
Yes, I'm praying. I'm praying. As we think about the blue cove for the Dolphins, I'm thinking about blue states for America. And that's not going to be the be all and the end all answer, but at least it's a shift, right? Where we can start fixing things.
Well, no matter who's in power, we need these people to step up to the plate and start addressing this ugly virus called racism,
Yeah.
because it's very evil and cruel, and it's just horrible. And
And a
so,
license to kill, as we have seen.
unfortunately, but
Yeah.
nobody gets up and addresses it. Nobody
No,
talks about it.
no.
It's sort of like people are afraid to talk about it, and I don't understand why. I talk about it all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't have.
Numerous shows on this.
I'm
Yes.
comfortable, but I'm comfortable with myself and who I
Yes.
am, and I feel we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
A lot of
How are we
people,
going to resolve it if we don't talk about it? How are we going to bring it to the forefront? This is a system that is wrong.
yeah,
All right. How are
yeah.
we going to put it right? Are we going to point to the government and say, you put it right? Well, we know they're not going to, not unless we demand that they do, which means that we, the citizens of our state, of our city, of our countries, have to step up and say, we are holding you accountable. What are you doing for the people without a voice? Because the homeless people don't have a voice. Their voice is dismissed.
You know what though, when you see them sitting out on this, laying in the streets, that's their voice,
Mm,
and everybody turns their heads, and
yeah,
everybody just says, we don't want them there, but nobody talks about solutions, and that's the scary part about it.
yeah.
Nobody
It
talks
was,
about, well, let's get them out. Let's just shove them somewhere else.
yeah, we out of
That's not the
sight, out of
mentality.
sight. Yeah,
But that's not the way to do it. We
yeah,
need to actually have solutions. We need to come up with ways to handle the homeless crisis, to help them in a way that gets them back on their feet and into jobs and into affordable housing programs, which there's no reason why we can't create those programs.
right. And if they need mental help, getting them the help they need. And some, are at a point of no return.
Yeah,
I mean, that is just the way it is. But
it's
you
reality.
can
Yeah.
still safeguard them. You can still be there for them. They're not going to turn around and come back. But what you don't want them to be is a detriment to themselves or anybody else around them. So, for that is kind of the monitoring. But for others, there's a way of helping them. And of course, you're going to have to want to be helped in order for someone to come along and help you. That has to be there. But, we're seeing we're seeing here so many organizations struggling with the homeless situation. And again, throwing them in hotels, but where are the social workers? And this defunding of the police, I think it's refunding we should be looking at, not defunding, is that the police have been taught to be militants, to go in and presume everybody is evil and shoot them. The autistic people, the people that have dementia, anybody of color.
Right.
We're seeing this brutal, and after George was killed, you're still seeing cops going around shooting black people. And it's like, have you not learned anything? Do you not watch the news?
I
You know,
can't figure that out.
have you no shame?
I can't. I can't figure that whole thing out. But just when you see that, I mean, if you got to shoot somebody, maybe just make it a very minimal shot. Don't
Seven,
kill them.
seven
We
shots in
shouldn't
the
be.
back of a guy's bag as he's trying to get into the car with his kids.
You shouldn't be just. We shouldn't be shooting these people to begin with.
Right.
And but you shouldn't be shooting to kill them. We
Right.
shouldn't be shooting to kill. I don't understand that.
If you are so fearful as a cop to go and shoot somebody in the back, then you shouldn't be a cop. You're not fit to be a cop emotionally.
Well, I think what they should be doing is going through a lot of the police records to see who has a history of violence and get rid of
Yes.
them. You got to get rid of people like that. I mean, we need to be police need to be compassionate at all times. And there's a lot of people that just have mental problems,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and you have to know how to deal with that. But shooting somebody 10 times or 15 times, or sitting on their neck and
Yeah.
suffocating them. I have to tell you, I had tears in my when
Yeah.
every time I saw that. It just, I mean, how could somebody be so cruel and
And
mean?
they're being filmed. Unapologetic, all of them kneeling on him. He's gasping for breath,
As
and
if
they
he thought he
don't
was doing the right
give
thing.
a damn. They don't
Yeah.
give a damn. I'm wearing the uniform. I can do what I want.
I gotta tell you, if I was there, and I can tell you, I'm just the kind of person that I'll do something. I'll step in
Yeah.
and do something if I have to.
Yeah.
If I was there, I would have stepped in. I mean, I would have seen that and known right off the bat it was wrong.
Yeah, but the
That's
people that were filming, that were watching, were black, and they knew that the guns would come out and shoot them, and however
right.
much
That's
they
true.
pleaded, right?
Right. No, I
If
was
it's
talking to a couple of my friends who are black,
right,
and they said, Mike, if I was there and saw it and did something, they would shoot me.
exactly, exactly.
It's horrible.
It's you know, uh, the Trevor Noah, who wrote a book, Born a Crime, because he was born black and white in South Africa. But when you think about it, being black in America is perceived a crime by the white man. Right. And, this is meant to be, they're meant to have liberty, they're meant to have freedom, they're meant to have equality, as women should have equality as well. That's still a long, long battle as well. Um, and when are we going to, 2020, when are we going to wake up and go, we can't have these segments of black, white, this, that. We're all human beings trying to make a living, and we have different cultures with our skin or our ethnicity, or, if we're immigrants, with what we bring. Why can't we embrace each other in wonderment to want to learn each other's culture and be excited about learning it, instead of looking at someone and being fearful by the color of their skin or the fact that they're homeless?
You're right. You say it very well. I mean, it's sad. It's because people need to be educated. It's all about education.
But don't you think it's also about heart ignition? I mean, how can you really walk by? There was an experiment done by someone, and he was on the street and he had a sign saying, "Need money for drugs." And people gave him money. "Here you go, mate. Thanks for being honest." He then turned the sign over, "Need money to feed my daughter." And he had a little girl there, cuddled up in his arms,
No
both
money.
looking disheveled. The only person who gave money was another homeless woman, who the money she had made that day, she went and gave to them. Everybody else walked by. I don't
Mm.
want to see it. It's too embarrassing. I don't want to acknowledge it. What have we become? Never mind the politicians right now. What have we become as a human race, that we can walk by people with such disdain and
Well,
such lack of heart?
I think part of the problem is people are counting on their government. It's sort of like it's the government's responsibility, not mine. I pay taxes. They need to deal with the problem.
Yeah,
And I
your
think
taxes go into war machines. Yeah.
that's true. For
Yeah.
sure.
No, I mean, no, let's face it, the entire system, drain the swamp, when we know what swamp he was talking about. Um, we've got to look at the entire political system as a swamp at the present moment. It has to be stripped down and restructured. And, one of the things you've got to get rid of is anywhere where anybody has power or could be bought. Corporations. I mean, I just saw Home Depot gave 70 million to Trump's campaign. And I think it's Lowe's gave 200 million towards the people that are facing a crisis right now so they don't become homeless. Who are you going to shop at? You know, so we can vote and we can take action even by the organizations that we're supporting. And if we see they're buying the politicians, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean they like them, they're buying them, right? And if we're seeing they're
There it is.
buying them, then we can boycott them and say, we're not going to give you business.
Absolutely, I
We
agree
have
with
a
you.
voice, we have action, we've got to use it.
We have to use our influence.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have to vote. That's a big
Yes.
part of it. And a lot of people don't vote in this country.
So
They
how
can,
could you get? I know. I mean, it's. I saw another posting of someone saying like, "This is just all too much. I can't take it anymore. I'm just closing down, and I'll wait until it's all finished." You are throwing away what people have fought for. Black people, women, ethnic groups fought for the right to vote, fought for the right to have a voice, and you are dismissing that altogether.
very good point. Very well stated. Yeah.
And and it is your responsibility. Stop abstaining, burying your head in the sand, because you are part of the problem. If you're not part of the solution, by your lack of participation, you are part of the problem. This is a human societal problem, not just a New York State or American problem. This is a global problem, and it's not going to be resolved by turning our cheeks the other way and going, I can't cope with it. All right, nobody's asking you to go in and fix everything, but choose something. Choose something that you're going to do that can enable, that can be a part of the solution. Because when we come together, it's not just about protesting, it's about the movement of coming together. Look how powerful we are, empowering we are when we decide to come together to make change. Now, why do the government wants to divide and pitch one against the other? Because the last thing they want to see is people united against the government.
That is sad.
It is sad, but isn't it true?
Yeah. I think you make some very good points.
Keep people divided, keep people hating, and then they can keep pulling the strings. Fear sells. I call it the CNN effect. They'll take a pimple and make it into a volcanic eruption. And we're seeing this right now with the garbage that people are buying and the hate rhetoric. I'm seeing people that I know to be very successful and supposedly very intelligent coming out bashing people left, right, and center. And I think, would you do this to your mirror? Go and do what the rhetoric that you've just given to someone else. Go and do it to your mirror. How do you feel? Do you feel good? Because understand this is a reflection of your inside out.
Right.
So if you're so discontented, you're discontented inside. I suggest you do some work on that before you spew it out.
So much anger out there.
And it's destroying. It's soul, heart, and literally physically destroying. And we're in 2020. We have at our fingertips enlightenment in every language in the world and every country in the world. We have just a click away enlightenment. I don't know what to do. Well, go and listen to a podcast, watch a TED Talks, look at the organizations that are doing something, ask questions. Is there something that moves you that you want to join? Just don't sit back and do nothing.
Amen. I say that all the time to people. And they, like people that complain, I go, well, get involved, do something.
Yes,
They won't. It's
be
too
the
much
change
work.
you wish to seek, right?
Too
It's
much
not going
work
to
for
happen for
them.
someone
Yeah.
else. Yeah. So, I mean, why can't a polling station just literally be put up and put into some homeless places? I mean, what do you have to go through to get a polling station put places?
I don't think you'd have to go through a lot at all. I think it can be easily done. And I think it shows that you, at least you're giving people who are homeless the right to be heard.
Right.
And voting is one of the, probably the single greatest way to be heard.
And let's give them incentive. They get a hot meal with it. You're not telling them how to vote, but you're saying, come and get a hot meal and use your constitutional right to vote.
Absolutely. And vote those politicians out of office who aren't helping you.
Oh boy, that's a lot of them. And as I said,
In New York City, there's 70,000 of them.
oh my God.
So
It's you also look at the people that are in the positions they're in and go, you don't know anything about the subject. Like the guy in charge of the postal, woman was asking what's the price of a stamp. He didn't know. You're in charge of the whole postal thing, the education thing, never educated or been educated.
I mailed a check to Chicago 4 weeks ago. Never received it. Then I sent it by special delivery through the post office. It was supposed to get there last Monday. They never received it. It's still in transit. Something is going on with that post office. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but it's not a pretty sight right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been waiting on a product for a week that should have been Prime Express and still lost in the post office and they can't find it. So yeah, it happens here too. Um, we're seeing the spillage happening over here with, people trying to pitch one against the other. And my comment to that was, this is not America. We don't do that here.
That's right.
Um, and America shouldn't be doing it either. If you're getting out there and you're spewing stuff at someone, shame on you. If you want to provide a solution, if you want to really ask questions to try and understand more, fine. But just spew, spew, spew. Like one guy had a sign about California, burn, you're a blue state, I hope you all die. God is on our side. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? What?
Terrible.
I mean, it's where is the humanity?
Wishing harm on other people,
Exactly.
cruel
Yeah.
and unjustified. And I always say, what comes around goes around.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to do that, it's going to come right back to bite you.
Exactly. You are a reflection of what you put out, and it's going to come back to you. And, the other thing is we have a responsibility. Stop buying everything and start asking questions. And somebody posts something, what was the one I watched? Clinton, Obama, and Tom Hanks are stealing babies to suck their blood in order to have longevity. And it's just like, and you're believing it? And you're believing it? Somebody put it up on the internet and, oh yeah, it must be true. Right? And so people are not taking any responsibility for what they're buying, what garbage they're buying. They've just bought it, the hysteria, and they're out of control. They've
I know
become
with me,
addicts.
if I don't like a company, I don't buy from them. And I can tell you right now,
Exactly.
I don't buy from Amazon
Hmm.
because they're putting all the little retailers out of business.
Exactly.
And try being my wife who just wants to buy from her. And I say, no, not in our house.
Right.
I'm not buying it. I'm not
Yeah.
buying anything from them. I don't order anything from them or support them because of the fact that they're putting all these little guys out of business, all the retailers. I don't like it.
No, and we can see, like in our area, we're an island that relies a great deal. It's government, but it's also the tourism. And of course, without the tourism this year,
Oh,
um, and now where is the money for us to provide everything? And that means that we as a society have to step up and, volunteer, 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 do what you can, where you can, however you can, but don't just sit back bitching, complaining, or judging or shaming if you're not doing something to provide a solution. I don't care if it's an ounce or a yard, just do something.
agreed.
So we've got to get the homeless out there voting. Maybe you should align with a few chefs and food company, and maybe look at trying to get these polling stations, even one, and rotate it in the different shelters over a week or whatever the case is, and to say, Hot Meal, Salvation Army, get them behind you. Hot Meal, come and vote. And
Well,
if they need something, then there can be some TVs there. This is the Trump rhetoric. This is the Biden rhetoric. Who has looked after you the most? Right, then go make your decision. And the thing is, if we get the people together, the inviters out here right now for all that's listening, in whatever state you're in, for the homeless people, get your food people together, Salvation Army, whatever the case is, get it into a homeless shelter, get a polling booth in there, give them a hot meal, give them some
that's some
education on what to
everything.
vote for, and get them to vote. Give them the right and the dignity to vote.
I mean, you're looking at potentially six, 700,000 votes around the country or more.
Yes, and we know how close things can get, and they could be some very very big votes. And if you don't want to stay homeless, if you do want to see some job opportunities or retraining on some housing, then you're not going to see it with this current government. If you want change, you can vote in the change, and then you can say to that change, we're not giving up, we're holding you accountable. We voted for you for change to be the change we seek.
Exactly.
If we don't speak out, they're just going to ignore us. We have to speak out.
Even when you speak out, they try to ignore us, but just got to keep speaking loud, louder and
Yeah,
louder and louder
yes.
until we're heard.
And not give up, not give in, be persistent, keep it keep it respectful. Don't go down the same vicious, nasty avenue of hate that they have done. But it's about accountability. And every single one of us can step up in some way or the other to help that accountability and help our fellow man that's fallen on hard times. Right? I know I lived out of my car and I didn't know where the next meal was coming from or where I was going. Of course, I was in depression because of the loss of everything,
Of
and
course.
I didn't know what was going to happen. And, fortunately, I managed to get some other people to invest in our product at the time, but that still didn't mean that we were secure or safe. Um, and you always feel vulnerable afterwards because you know that it could happen again so very easily. So until you've walked a mile in that person's shoes, please don't pass judgment.
Agreed. And now look at you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've taken this for the last 8 years and supported people like you who are out making a difference because we need people like you and we need people to get behind you, be inspired by you, and step into actionism.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So, how do people get hold of you if they want to say, "Look, I believe in what you're doing. What can I do? How can I be directed somewhere in doing something?" So, how do they get hold of you? How can you help them help others?
It's www.centralparkcivicassociation.com. www.centralparkcivicassociation.com. They can contact us that way.
And they can sign up and volunteer, or they can
Sure.
inquire what's going on and be educated and take that information back to their own community.
Absolutely. Well, we're spending a lot of time on the homeless issue, but we also spend time on other issues that impact people in our communities in this city. I mean, if I don't get up and do something, nobody will. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I started doing these things when I became board president of my building and dealt with a lot of crazy issues, including I got a restaurant put out of business because all the smoke from the restaurant was coming into our building. So I fought them, with the Department of Environmental Protection, and so I'm a fighter. I fight.
And the human beings are worth fighting for. Dignity is worth fighting for.
Absolutely, I fully agree with that.
And
200%.
we cannot turn a blind eye. We may not be able to get out there that from the front headlines, but it doesn't matter. You could be handing out bottles of water to the people that are on the march. Every single little thing counts, but just don't be complacent and don't turn your back on it because we can't do that. Um, the situation with COVID, with, as you said, so many people going to be evicted and there aren't the jobs and they're not getting the government support. How many are going to be on that street? And again, a statistic of foster children, 70% of foster children in the States end up in the prison system. And the sexual trade, this was 3 or 4 years ago, so I'm sure it's even more now, $150 billion a year on sex trade. So when you're looking at the homeless, and especially when you're looking at homeless of women and children, you are going to see that them automatically become victims of that, and we can't allow
Can't
that.
allow children to be in the street, mothers and their children to be in the streets like that
Yeah,
in this day and age. And you can't just stick them in these shelters where they're so unsafe. We
yeah,
really
yeah,
need to create these programs to help them off the streets and get them back on their feet again.
yes,
And there's all the money we have.
I
There's
know.
so much money.
It's so mismanaged.
Horribly.
And it's all patting, the next one on the back, and what can they gain from it. And I call it the ivory tower syndrome. They're up in their ivory tower, they're gilded gold everywhere, and they really don't care about the people who are maintaining their foundation, that have built this tower for them. And at some point there's going to be rebellion, and they're going to be knocking off all that foundation, and you're going to crumble and fall, because if you don't take care of the people that are taking care of you, it's going to backfire on you. And we're going to see this, all the elitists and all the ivory towers, they're going to come crumbling down.
We see it happening now in this
Yeah,
country.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for stepping up and doing what you're doing. And as I said, Salvation Army, restaurants, in the neighborhoods, food banks, whatever, make a hot meal, invite them in, have a couple of TVs where they can watch what's going on, make a choice for themselves, and then have a voting booth. And you can move this around to all the homeless shelters throughout your city and get that vote. There isn't any excuse. All we need is innovation.
Amen to that.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, Michael.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Yeah, you too, honey. And remember, please, folks, this isn't somebody else's problem. It's everybody's problem. It's the human race problem. So get out and vote. Step up and be part of the solution that we need. This isn't a la, 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 it's going to go away. It's only going to go away if you step up and do something about it. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to bringing you more shows. Please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows, and you will see the incredible lineup of genres and shows that we have for you. We are here to make a difference in your life. Thank you for listening.